Tonight. So ever since Carl Palladino's lopsided victory in the September 14th Republican primary, the race for governor has been turned on its ear. The Democratic nominee, who was once perceived as both invincible and inevitable, is now the target of increasing criticism, and much of the grumbling is actually coming from inside Andrew Cuomo's own party. There are members of that party who feel left behind as he tacks to the right to woo independents and Republicans. Now, black voters in particular are feeling ignored by Cuomo and upset by the lack of diversity on the statewide ticket. As we have seen, their upset is given a voice in Charles Barron's protest candidacy. Now, today, Cuomo tried to address these problems by meeting with several prominent black leaders in Harlem. Among those in attendance was my next guest. Bill Thompson is the former comptroller of the city of New York, the Democrats' nominee for mayor of that city in 2009, and co-chair of Cuomo's campaign. He is joining us from the city tonight. How are you?
I'm good, Liz. How are you?
I am well. So you were in Harlem this morning when there was a meeting of leaders that you attended, of African-American leaders, clergy, business, and political. How did it go?
It was a good meeting. I mean, one of the things, and I listened to your introduction, I don't know that people have felt left out because Andrew Cuomo has moved to the right. I think that everybody, one of the things that came out of the meeting earlier today was that people have known Andrew Cuomo for years. As a matter of fact, a few people said for decades, and they've had the chance to work with him. I've had the chance to work with him. Others have had the chance to work with him over a period of years and years, whether it was with Help One back in Brooklyn and other places, whether it has been at HUD or as Attorney General of the state of New York. So it was a good meeting. It was an opportunity to talk about common issues. It was an opportunity to talk about an urban agenda, which is going to be rolled out in the next week to 10 days. It was a chance for people to reaffirm their support and talk about next steps in the campaign. Where do we go? But it was also a chance to talk about Carl Palladino.
Okay, wait. Before we talk about Carl Palladino, hold on. Let's just go one step at a time, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Just indulge me for a second. Obviously, however, there's some feeling in the black community that was also given voice to by Eleanor Tatum, who's the publisher of the oldest continuously publishing black newspaper, who basically said that Andrew Cuomo hasn't been paying enough attention to the black community. I mean, there's got to be something there. Then we see a Times story today that people are upset. I mean, where does that come from then?
Well, I think that what everybody is interested in seeing right now is the next steps in the campaign, is the campaign to move into a different gear, a very aggressive gear. And I think they're going to see that right now. I think that that was one of the things that people talked about earlier today, as well as it isn't a question of voting against somebody. We want to make sure that people vote for Andrew Cuomo, and that was the discussion about making sure that people around the state, but particularly African Americans and those in the Latino community, understand that Andrew is speaking to them. And I think those were some of the areas that we covered earlier today. We were talking about positive things, talking about making sure this campaign is energized, making sure it reaches out to ministers, as I said, the clergy, reaching out to business people, average New Yorkers, average African Americans and Latinos all across New York State.
But, Bill, is it not then an acknowledgement that you actually had to have this kind of a meeting, that there's been a lack of attention to those particular topics?
I wouldn't say it's a lack of attention. As I said, I think if you look, the Cuomo people have been working on an agenda, an urban agenda, for months now. People, have brought up a couple of issues. It's in there. And I think that it was a question of perhaps at this point the campaign communicating a little better, letting people know the direction that they're going in, giving them the things that they're working on. I think that was accomplished this morning. So I think you saw the press conference afterwards, or the availability. We're all on the same page, and we're moving forward in unified fashion to be able to win this election in November.
Okay, just before we move on to Carl Palladino, do you think that there's any leftover feeling of upset or animosity among black voters who are upset by Andrew Cuomo's challenge to the first major party black gubernatorial candidate in 2002? It was H. Carl McCall, the former state comptroller.
Absolutely not. I think that if you look at the meeting this morning, it was called by a few people. It was called by Carl McCall and myself. Carl helped to lead the discussion. and he was probably one of the more vocal supporters. So, no, there is no leftover animosity. That was in the past. We're looking at now. We're looking at making sure that the state is turned around and making sure that people have opportunity in the next administration.
So there's some segment of the black community clearly that doesn't agree with you because a former New York City, or rather current, sorry, from Brooklyn, New York City Councilman Charles Barron had protesters there. He spoke to me earlier on, and he says that Andrew Cuomo is dividing the House of Labor, is moving too far to the right. He's leaving the liberal base behind, and also he sees Carl Palladino and Andrew Cuomo sort of in the same brushstroke, and that's actually kind of an interesting thing to say. What do you respond to that way?
There couldn't be anything further from the truth. I think Andrew is working to expand and bring newer voters on, more progressive voters also, but isn't forgetting the old Democratic coalition, understands that he can't win without African American, Latinos, Caribbean Americans, labor, everybody. And I think that's the message that we'd like to carry forward. This is a big, as they say, a big tent. And then everybody is welcome underneath it. So, no, he's not ignoring anybody. He's not ignoring past friends in order to make new friends. There's room for everybody, and I think that's what we're trying to communicate. Everybody's welcome. We have to do this. The only way to turn New York State around, the only way to bring a new day about in New York State is if we do it in unified fashion and if we do it together. So, I mean, I couldn't disagree more. Carl Palladino is an incredibly different person than Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo's been there. He's worked with people in the past. He's helped as Attorney General to champion a number of different things. Carl Palladino, the more that you learn about him, I think the more that he scares people. And that's the exact thing. That's one of the things that was brought out this morning. People talked about how, how offended, how the racist nature of some of his comments, of some of his ideas, of the emails that he forwarded. I find, and a number of other people find Carl Palladino frightening, if to put it mildly.
Now, there were some stakeholders, though, who weren't there. Some sort of people that we come to expect are speaking as part of the coalition of the black community. For example, the Reverend Al Sharpton. My understanding was that he was supposed to be there, or at least invited. What happened to that?
The Reverend Sharpton was one of those who helped to call the meeting also. I think he wound up having to go on, there was another media demand on his time, so he wasn't able to make it. We only found out at the last minute. But no, he has been part of this discussion and is part of moving an agenda forward. So, as I said, I think that there is a number of, it was a smaller meeting. I think you'll see other meetings as we continue to bring other people, not on board because other people are there, but making them aware of some of the agenda items, making them aware of the issues that directly affect their constituents, and I think all of that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks.
Now, Andrew Cuomo today, this morning, spoke more directly to Carl Palladino than we have seen in the past. He called him an extremist. And we're hearing the message again from you. You're saying that he's frightening and dangerous. Is there a possibility, first of all, that, Carl Palladino has forced Andrew Cuomo to engage? Is that not, when we play the chess game of politics, sort of being in a position of defensiveness instead of offensiveness and not controlling the center, if you will?
No, I think that, there are things that Carl Palladino has said that can't go unchallenged. And I think that is what Andrew Cuomo did. But I think Andrew isn't going to get in the gutter and go back and forth with Carl Palladino. He's going to talk to the people of New York State about why he should be governor, about his agenda for change in the state of New York, about making sure that people understand that he knows there's a need for jobs and a need for affordable housing, that education is a priority. All those things are going to be talked about during this campaign. It isn't going to be about Carl Palladino. It's going to be about the future of New York State and the issues that Andrew Cuomo feels are important. So I don't think that, as I said, people, there's this overlooking of some of the things that Carl Palladino has said. I don't think we want to do that. I think we need to be honest and blunt and let everybody understand that Carl Palladino is not the right type of person, is not fit to be the governor of the state of New York.
But how is that not gutter politics, though? I mean, when you get down there and say he's extreme, he's dangerous, he's frightening, that's not gutter politics to call out a person and call them extreme?
someone who is engaged in the things that he has done, I think it's a statement of fact. Someone who is talking about taking families and poor and welfare families and putting them up in refitted or retrofitted prisons, I think that's extreme. Somebody who talks about being, I think, a benevolent dictator, I think that's extreme. Some of the positions that Carl Palladino has advanced, I think that's extreme. I don't think that's gutter politics. I think that's being honest. And if you're not going to be honest, then, you know, I think that's a mistake. So it is not gutter politics to tell the truth. Talking about Carl Palladino this morning and asking and still saying that the racist, and we've seen some of the emails that he's forwarded and been involved in, apologize for those things. They're offensive, and not just offensive to others, they should be offensive to him.
But he has said, hold on, he has said actually that he's sorry for offending people, that he wasn't thinking, that it wasn't a good idea. I mean, how many times do you think that we should reiterate this issue of the emails? Are they just going to go forward through November? And also, I mean, emails, people, are we going to get down to a point in this campaign where we're going to ask every single candidate, have you ever forwarded an inappropriate, racist, et cetera, email?
I think it is the number and the volume first. I think I've heard Carl Palladino say he can understand why people might have been offended. At the same point, he hasn't said they were offensive and apologize for those. And I think that needs to occur. And at the same point, it isn't just emails. It's the positions that he's taking. It's the direction he wants to move the state in. And I don't think we can afford to go back and, you know, go back 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago in history. I'm not willing to do that. Others aren't willing to do that. I think, you know, as Mayor Young of Mount Vernon said, this is personal right now. Many people have felt offended. I have. Others have also. And I think that's another reason why we're responding so strongly.
But clearly, he's something about him and something about his message has managed to connect with voters.
I think that what you're looking at right now is an appeal to the worst, is an appeal to fear, is an appeal to, you know, anything other than. And I don't think that that sells. I'd like to hear. And I think that this campaign should be about ideas and direction, not just about the worst, not just about beating up people with baseball bats and taking people away to jail. That's what we've heard from Carl Palladino. That's nice, and it appeals to the worst. I'd like to see, and I think Andrew Cuomo is going to appeal to the best, to talk about ideas, to talk about a future and a direction. That's what's needed in a campaign. That's what campaigns should be about, a discussion of ideas, not a discussion of the worst and appealing to fear.
Let me just ask you, since you're here, we're seeing an awful lot of you recently these days. You said back after 2009 that you would run for mayor again of the city of New York in 2013. Are you thinking maybe about something statewide? Because at one point you were touted for any number of statewide offices.
No, I am still focused on running again for mayor in 2013. That's my focus. That's the direction I'm moving in.
So will you be campaigning around the state? Because I know now you're in the private sector. I mean, are you going to be helping Andrew Cuomo to take this message out to various places, points sort of north of New York City?
Well, I think that I can probably best serve the campaign and best help to move a message forward here in New York City. Am I against going outside of the city? Absolutely not. But I think that right now you'll see you'll see me spending my time in New York City trying to get Andrew Cuomo elected as the next governor of the state.
Well, one thing about this race, Bill, I think it's not boring.
No, it's anything but boring. But as I said, looking forward to going out, mobilizing people, and having a huge turnout on Election Day. That's what our focus is right now, getting that message out.
Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us, Bill Thompson.
Thank you, Liz.
Okay. And we will be back one final time with a look ahead to tomorrow's show right after a short break. Please stay with us.